Another thing about trauma is when a cheetah chases a gazelle, 9 times out of 10 the gazelle will escape. And if you watch an animal after it's been, and that is the potential for a lot of trauma because that gazelle is running for its life. What the animal will do is it'll shake afterwards. And my personal belief is that that shaking helps resolve trauma in the body. So there are now classes for PTSD where they have people shake, and they also have those vibrating plates that were created by the Soviet Union for the cosmonauts
Right.
that will vibrate the body. I used to do qigong on one of those, and I think this shaking or buying one of those machines could be very, very useful in resolving a physiological way to resolve trauma.
And motion, putting the body in motion when you have that adrenaline. Like, let's say you're walking down the hall and somebody jumps out and scares you, right? And you feel that rush of adrenaline. You're like, right? You have, when all those chemicals are released into your body, you're meant to fight or run away, which is going to take a lot of energy, and basically using that energy like burns off those chemicals, so they're not circulating through your body anymore, and you can go back into the parasympathetic response. If you don't burn off all those chemicals through some sort of activity, I forget the exact number, but I'm going to say 6 hours. Don't quote me on it. But those chemicals are like circulating through your body for like 6 hours if you don't burn them off pretty
Interesting.
pretty
So
immediately.
you'll take that on as an imprint.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if this happens all the time with people who have insomnia, if that happens at night and you don't burn those off, you've got the adrenaline running through your body and you can't sleep, and that's a big part of insomnia as well. And so the shaking, part of what it does is it creates that movement to burn off the rest of those chemicals so that you can get out of the hyperadrenalized state and go into the parasympathetic response. So one thing that I was taught to do is whenever I feel that adrenal response happening, to immediately, like within 90 seconds, do some sort of physical exertion. So whether that's jumping jacks or sprinting or whatever, jogging in place or doing the shaking, do something that's like big time physical exertion to burn that off, and that will also help you go into the parasympathetic response.
Sounds great. Yeah. One of the things that I was curious about for years was, I understand why we need adrenaline when we're swimming away from a shark or fighting for our lives or hanging off a cliff. I get that part. But I never understood why I would become adrenalized in a social relationship or in a personal or a romantic relationship. Why would I get adrenalized? I thought about it for a long time, and I finally realized that we're tribal creatures, and we need each other. We like to think that we don't care what other people think, but the truth is we care a lot what other people think, unless we're a psychopath. And that's a whole other topic. But most of us care a lot what other people think. And that, what I call the social mirror, is very important. And because we're tribal creatures, if we are shunned by our peers or the people we depend on, we feel like our life will be threatened. As tribal creatures, they say a lone baboon's a dead baboon.
Yeah.
So if I'm shunned, I could die. And I don't know if you've ever been in a bunch of people having a conversation and one person won't look at you. That feeling you get?
Yeah.
And it's devastating.
Right. Well, and you're freaked out. You're scared. It's just like this sinking feeling.
Exactly.
Like, oh, crap.
That's a very natural response. So that's because you're being shunned, or in some cultures, shunning is a way of controlling people. So in personal relationships, one of the things that I find is most challenging is navigating what I call shadow, which is a Jungian term. And shadow is the things about ourselves that we don't want to look at, that we deny, avoid, and repress. When we're growing up as children, we all suppress a certain part of ourselves in order to survive. And that we spend, 20 years creating our shadow, and then if we're lucky, 60 to 80 more years navigating, trying to get it back, trying to reclamation. Because I have a personal belief that the reclamation of shadow is the reclamation of the self and the reclamation of the earth, as we said before. So the idea of shadow in relationship is very tricky. And, there's the idea of projection. I I have something about myself I don't want to look at, and I talk about those people, those jerks
Right.
out there. Look at them doing that thing. When really, I'm afraid I'm going to do it, or I'm ashamed of the fact that
That you
I've
have
done
done
it.
it, yeah.
So that happens all the time in relationships, in all relationships that I know of.
Many of the people I work with, that's where most of their stress comes from, right? There's relationship stress with their boss, relationship stress with their kids, relationship stress with their spouse,
Right.
or their
It's a lot of
significant others or
adrenaline.
family.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in order to navigate a relationship and to navigate the adrenaline in a relationship, I have a belief that we need to understand what a healthy psyche is. What is it? What does it mean to be a healthy, emotionally healthy human being? Some people call it emotional intelligence. My partner and I call it emotional integrity. But what does it mean to be a healthy human being? And in our classes, we deal with that structure that we believe is what would embody a healthy relationship. So in the relationship, we get triggered, and there's inappropriate behavior and appropriate behavior. So if somebody steals my wallet or somebody insults me, it's natural to be triggered, to be adrenalized. And then there's a reason, that's a reasonable response for that.
Right.
But sometimes in relationship, so we're not being physically threatened, but somebody will say something that's very wounding. And in my world, my belief or my hallucination is that when I'm triggered in a relationship and my partner is behaving in a way that's appropriate, that's my shadow.
Okay.
So when I get triggered, that means there's something in me that needs to be healed, and that adrenaline points to where I need to look in myself.